All right, guys, welcome back to a special edition of Rough Cut Faith. Guys, as you are seeing this, you'll be seeing this after a series of interviews that we did several months back now at this point, back in the old space. And so now as we sunset the first season of Rough Cut, wanted to follow up and have a follow-up conversation about with you guys about a variety of things. You know, we just had Easter, and there's now two major holidays in the books in the new space, and so I'm just curious to pick your guys' brains. Mike, I'll start with you. What was it like to have some of the same trimmings, some of the same aspects of the typical holiday worship experience, but to see this body of believers translated into a new space?
I think there's two different answers to that. So in one sense, nothing's changed. Like, in one sense, we still celebrated the same way we would. The people who were here were there a year ago. So it didn't feel like anything new,
Right.
you know, in that sense. But on the other hand, an entirely new context in which all of us worshiped carried with it the beauty of seeing a whole church come through a move, a whole church band together and say, yes, we agree this needs to happen. Yes, we agree that we will make this happen. So it wasn't just a new space. It was like a communal endeavor to get here. And so I felt it more palpably at Christmas. The celebration of Christmas was kind of like a celebration of arrival, transition and coming through in a positive way. So when we get to Good Friday and Easter, I felt like it was just really special to be able to say, look, this works too. You know, the ability to worship together and to celebrate these special milestones in the life of the church, it works here. And it doesn't feel all that different from how it felt before. So the intimacy of Good Friday felt the same as it did in another space that was smaller and that we'd kind of treated like our own living room, you know. And I think it also spoke to how the church has adjusted to this new space to be able to say, it just feels good. It feels like comfortable. It feels like we belong here.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it may be a bigger living room, but I think I like that analogy a lot that you use, because I said to all of you guys after Good Friday, it's that service of the year that helps me reconnect with the idea of communion and really feel like this is an experiential moment with a body of believers together as a community, and this space can very easily be turned into something that doesn't have that intimacy factor, that cozy environment, that sort of thing, but with just a slight change in the dynamic of the room and a continuity of mindset and mentality from the people, suddenly in a brand new space, you still have that same togetherness.
Yeah.
Gerald, I know a lot of the times on a Sunday morning or at a even Friday, you know, you and I had some conversation. You know, a lot of times you're in the back, right, and you're surveying and you're just kind of taking in the room. What was it like to be able to sit back and to with all pulling forward all of the experience, right? Last time we had a conversation, we talked about kind of what brought you to the point of coming alongside the guys and planting the church, and so all of that experience, being able to take a step back and say, man, the continuity is here. We have come together stronger for this as a community.
Yeah, just looking at Good Friday, it was really good to just be able to just sit back and just watch the people. They didn't just walk out after the service. Mm-hmm. It was really nice to be able to see everybody coming together, as like Mike said, as a community, and being able to just spend time together, you know, and just kind of live life. They could have just all just got up, and after the service, they could have found their way out one of the doors, but it was a while before anybody did that. And it took, it was probably a good half an hour, 45 minutes.
45 minutes before we could start really putting chairs, rearranging for Sunday.
Yeah. And that's something that we kind of helped foster, even in the old building, but watching that come here, and even with new people showing up, you're seeing that start to filter down through even the people that haven't been with us since the beginning, which has been really, really neat to see that in the new space.
Yeah, one of the things that it's been cool to see, to shift through the different points for me with the community of being the new guy, having people come alongside me and invite me into the context, and now to over a year later get a chance to watch new people come through the door and watch the community do that with them, and watch that context spread to them, and in a way that invites them into the context, even though those long-term relationships aren't established and all of that, that there's still this welcoming nature is one of the most special components of the culture of the Grove, in my opinion. Scott, so you took the stage on Sunday, and a lot of times you are the most frequent teacher. What has it been like to watch the shift in such a substantive way take place from that context into here, and now get a chance to be able to look at, kind of that boots on the ground perspective of being here so much in the transition process and building this place up to what it is now?
Yeah, it's weird when we were going through the building process of it all. It just seemed surreal. It was just a project. It was like, okay, just get stuff done. There was relational connection with folks that was really like that's stuff that I have always enjoyed and appreciated. If I'm doing a project, I like to have people around. So this was really cool in that sense, that there were people around. The opening weekend, when it was like all pulled together, it was kind of like you found a new suit, and you go, and it's a fancy suit, and it's fancier than you've really ever worn before, and you're not sure if it fits right. That's how it was great to be done and to open and to be like, okay, we're across the line. But there was kind of that sense of like, oh, it feels good, but is it how do I feel in it? And I think the shift for me was seeing the church start to do the things that we were doing before. To see the relational connection with people, and it took about a month and a half, and I was like, oh nope, all right, yeah, it feels good, and it wasn't just like the stage is different, and that's a weird thing because we were in that cozy home living room feeling with like this older stained glass on the stage, and it just had
It's a
I don't know.
130-year-old
Yeah,
building.
Yeah.
it felt like an old theater kind of a vibe. I mean, it was church, very much church, but it had that, like, there was history that was there. This was built in '77. It's kind of that modern art or modern deco kind of vibe, and so it just feels different. But what's been really encouraging is to see that the community is still the same.
Yep.
Like the people here is what have, like, on a Sunday, the lighting is different, but I still get to interact with people that are still engaging with the concepts of Scripture and living in response to what Jesus has called us to. And so it's like, the entrapments, the dressing, the suit, it's actually way more flexible than I thought it was at first. You know, it's like, oh, we're getting that chance to do more things and new things, and we're 0.7 of a mile away from the last location, but it's a completely different neighborhood.
Yep.
And starting to get to know the routines of people here in the neighborhood, starting to get to understand, okay, well, like, which street is busier, you know, like of the side streets here. And you're just starting to observe the way the property feels and engages and how to leverage that for relationships.
Yep.
How to leverage that for people to connect with each other, how to leverage that for people to have experiences that are helping them move closer to Christ, to learn to listen to the Spirit in their lives. And in that sense, the boots on the ground piece is, I get a chance to see it happening in a lot of, like, more groups that are happening. I get to see it in a lot of different areas. Where it's just like, you know, the old property, yeah, we still had a lot of those types of things happening, but this property, they're centralized into a couple spots, and so you see them more. Like, even if you're not involved in a specific group at any given time, you know, oh, that's going on right there, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's been the encouraging thing, to see people, like, excited about it and not feeling like this is like, oh, it's just not the same old place. It's not what it used to be. I've not heard any of that. I've heard people talk about fond memories, but excited about the new experiences.
Yeah.
I know we had several conversations after the launch of the building of, you know, what about this, or does this need to change, or does that, you know, those just questioning how you fit, how the church fits in this space now that everything is all said and done. But yeah, I think there's a solid theme through each one of your answers that talks about the people portion of it, and how the people have responded to the experience. So I want to flip the camera now to you guys when talking about the impact of the move. So, Mike, I know you're you know, when you look at the dichotomy, you do a lot of the worship and then you know, a part of the teaching. So walking through all of this, right? Walking through the experience of the history of the first part of the Grove story, and then walking through the process of the transition, and now being most of the time tasked with the responsibility of being the one that helps facilitate leading people into a posture of worship on Sunday morning. What impact has establishing a new venue, moving a church, and all of that had on you as a pastor?
It was traumatic.
I'm glad you're honest about it.
Not to be overly dramatic, but the process was very difficult, because the life of the church didn't stop while we were moving. So you had there were months where these guys put in more time doing paperwork and getting loans and navigating the assessments and meetings with different people and all of that. So, but that took a long time to get to June. And then from June till the end of September, it was get the building ready. So we had basically a year-long process where we still had to do everything that we normally would do, plus renovate a building and move and organize. And so anyone who's ever moved from one house to another knows how difficult that is. So we took 100 people from one house to another, and navigating the logistics of that while also saying we still have a service every weekend. It would have been nice if we just went from June to the end of September, no services, we're just working on moving. But we couldn't do that, and that wasn't our value to do that. That was important for us to maintain the consistency of a regular weekend service for the church. So in that regard, it was like carrying a load, and then somebody says, here, take this too. And we all just went, all right, here, we got to strap this on and let's climb the mountain. And that goes for everybody. Like, I think collectively there was a form of difficulty. I call it trauma, but small t trauma. But you left one place that was filled with memories, that was filled with heart, that was filled with struggle, and the blood, sweat, and tears that went into 12 years in one location, starting with 8 people and building it into a self-sustaining church. There's an emotional component that goes along with that. So it wasn't just the physical shift and move, it was the emotional shift and moving of all of the people who have been with us for that 12 and 10 and 5 years, however long it was. So it's navigating the emotional toll as well as the physical toll on us as well as everybody else. I think that was what really sucked the energy, sucked the emotion out of. So by the end, we were just like husks. That's why we said we have to take January and pull back a little bit, because we won't have anything to get us through the next year if we don't start stepping away and stepping back. So I think as far as how that has shaped the worship experience, it's an understanding of what we've gone through and an understanding of what everyone else has been going through. And there's a mix of a lot of excitement coming into it, but there was, in the midst of that excitement, there was also, we're exhausted. Everyone is emotionally kind of torn. There's this bittersweet nature of moving, and learning to be sensitive to what that means for everybody. So the expectations that are put on us, the expectations that we have for everyone here. I mean, we did jump in with trunk or treat a month from our opening service, and then food packaging, and there were these events that we had, with recognizing that these aren't going to be huge. These are going to be, we want to be part of the neighborhood here and offer these things, but we're also operating at a limited capacity, both personally and congregationally, and trying then to be sensitive to what capacity do we actually have now, even going into this new year? What's the capacity of the congregation? Because we've shifted, we've transitioned into this space. Have we emotionally healed from the worn out nature of what a marathon does? Like, you don't end a marathon and then go back the next week and run another one. There's a healing process.
It's funny when you think about, you mentioned it was a long time. It was also very short.
It was too short.
From the time that from the time that I walked the space to even see if it, I heard this church closed, to when we opened was less than a year. So that's like in a
from an organizational standpoint,
to present that to a group of people, asking them to help you be part of the discernment process, to then working with all of the logistics that go sideways, to then actually having a plan ready, to then start implementing the plan and moving through that process, relying on volunteers, really, for the most part. I mean, we had some vendors that we used, but there was a ton that went on.
A majority was volunteer time.
I mean, not only that, but just adding into the fact that we didn't just move from one home to another, we added the fact that we were actually making improvements to the new
Yeah.
new space.
Yeah.
And that's,
And the
you know,
old.
when you have and
Yeah.
the old.
And the old.
And, you know, when you have this type of a space, it's not like you have a 1,200 square foot house.
Yeah.
You're
Right,
trying to
yeah.
do that too.
Yeah.
This is a 5,000 square foot
Yeah,
building,
yeah.
you
Plus
know.
property.
Plus property and
Yeah.
everything else, which you, when you get into that process, sometimes you don't always know how you're going to be able to work with others.
Yeah.
So even though we were a team for so long and we had people that were part of the church, that community, you learn that as moving into this space, that working with others and that sensitivity, that there's learning what that understanding really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It changes. It changes you, it changes the people that are in that community, because now you
Yeah.
felt like
Yep.
you've went through something together.
Yeah.
And that's the important part. You know, when we embarked on this, we knew that was going to be part of it, but we didn't know the extent of it.
You don't know what it looks like until
What
you're
it
there.
It's going to be a really tiring couple of months. You get done, you're like, I'm so exhausted.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's funny you went there, because I was going to ask the all play question of, do you think that shared endeavor, that battle that was done with everybody all together, has borne a positive impact and an increased camaraderie among the community that's reflective now, when things are,
Yeah.
from a logistical standpoint, settled down and things like that, and now you can move into, okay, how do we now adapt into life?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. That'd be my
Yes.
experience. I think even the language of people in the church changed.
Yeah.
When we approached this, it became our church, as opposed to, like, it's weird. We had tried to say it was our church for years. You know, like
Ours
not-
is in
this
the
like,
collective.
not, yeah, as a
Collective,
collective, not
yeah.
just like ours. But for whatever reason, often when you start a church, people will be like, "Oh, it's your church," and they'll refer to you as like part of the pastors. Like, oh, it's your church, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, it's not. It's Jesus' church, but it's our church
Yeah, all
together.
together.
And that was a big shift that I noticed in the middle of the move. Was I stopped hearing people talk about like your church referring to me or to the other guys. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
it was our church, and that I think
was
that
big.
has continued to play through
Yeah.
in this space. I don't know what your guys' observations are.
Yeah, I think when you have the kinds of experiences where you take people from different contexts and you stick them together and you say, this is the goal, this is what we're trying to accomplish today, it can help bring people together from contexts that wouldn't normally, like, there are guys that I stop and talk to and have relationship with and are closer with for our time, or from our time being here, as much as we were together and working together and
Yeah.
all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the challenge is when you go from a period like that where there's so much interaction and so much togetherness into kind of like, okay, breathe, and that goes away.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That has probably been one of the challenges that I think I've heard several people address of, oh, I kind of miss being around other people as
Yeah.
much as we were.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because Scott was so positive, so I have to bring some negativity.
Well, you
into-
know.
It's usually how it
Yeah,
goes.
that's how it works. No, that was an observation too. That you go from every week I would see the same people for 3 or 4 hours,
Yeah.
and then once we moved in, it was like, oh, it's not a built-in relational connection now.
Yeah.
I have to go and make time to go hang out with this guy for a couple of hours,
Yeah.
or I wouldn't even have a conversation with him for like a month. And there's in that transition, that's hard. That's because you do build those relational connections, and it feels like, in the midst of it, it feels like, oh, it's always going to be this way. And then the time is done, and it's not like anyone's mad at each other or anything. It's just, we just don't have this that built-in time anymore.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that was really positive on the backside, but difficult, is when there's pressure, that's where you see the cracks. That's where you see weak points in relationships.
Yeah.
And just as as we worked through so much and we're under so much pressure, be it the four of us or the congregation or people helping, like there were times where the pressure revealed some relational stress. And that was difficult at the time, but I feel like it's also been positive because we've been able to say, all right, what did that reveal? What's going on there? What needs to be changed? What needs to shift in our relationship and in how we do things so that we can be stronger? That's why you do stress tests on products, when there's
people.
products.
Yeah,
Or people. So in a big way, like this move was big. It was the biggest thing we've done as a church, and it was kind of a stress test for who are we as a church? Is this going to work relationally? Are we strong enough to come through the difficulties and come through that tension, and then come on the other side and not all be mad at each other, or not be like we could still be friends. We were mad at each other at various points throughout the process. So there was tension there, but we could come out of that and go, let's deal with it. And I think that's why I say it's really positive now. There were times where it was just so stressful because there was tension.
Yeah. Nobody likes going to medical offices for a test, right? And it's this feeling of but then you can respond to it, right? After you go and get a test done, then you can act accordingly. And there's a lot of wisdom in what you said about, okay, so something happened, right? A crack was exposed. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
How are you going to respond when somebody upsets you, or when there's a disagreement or difference or something like that? That was really good. So, Jer, I know for you, a lot of the heaviest of lifting that you do within the context of the pastoral team is behind the scenes. And so you had a lot to do with all of the gears turning, behind the scenes, and with relationships and vendors and this and that and the paperwork side. So getting a chance to walk through that process with, as crazy as your schedule is normally, without something like that, what impact has walking through all of this and now sitting on this side of it had on you as a pastor?
I think the biggest one for me is it's helped me kind of understand myself a little bit more. Because I'm a little bit more tense type person. I like to get things done. I like to be able to have things move forward. And I noticed for myself there was just some times when I just had to let the process happen. And the process sometimes is not not something that I'm that accustomed to. I know processes. I like them. But there, when you're in the midst of it, and you have an idea of what that process should look like, and I'm sure we all do too. We're like, okay, I know this will do this. We can do that. We can get that done. But then when you have to duck and dive and move and say,
You're
okay, well,
pivoting
that didn't
constantly.
happen. Like, okay, well, this we can't do because of that, or time-wise, it just didn't happen. I look at that and I go, God's going to do things certain ways, and it might not be the ways that we're thinking that they're going to be.
Right.
But it has helped me look at that a little differently and go, hey, maybe I got to look at that and go, okay, things are going to get done, and they're going to get done when they're going to get done. I can't force this. And there are a lot of times it does it comes out better when I'm not the one
Forcing
forcing
Yeah.
it, but there are things that need to get done at certain times because you just got to work within other contexts.
Yep.
Like the paperwork and stuff like that. You have to work within other people's schedules and things like that. So that's one of the things. So it's definitely just looking inward on this whole process too, and I'm sure we all did,
Yeah.
because like we said, it wasn't as easy as we thought it might be, even though we knew that it was going to be a tough process.
Right.
So,
Yeah, a lot of the bobbing and weaving and responding to things that were out of our control.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I know one of the ways that you and I relate is we bring an experience and acumen for business into the pastorate. And I would imagine that when you are trying to move the giant cogs that are involved in trying to sort everything out, even though it is only 0.7 of a mile, you might as well be moving from one state to another.
Just means the drive is shorter,
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still have the same amount of stuff.
Yes, exactly. I would imagine there's this weird conflict that may take place between like that business side of like, yeah, I like processes because it gives guardrails for
Yeah.
everything to run on and things can go and all of that. And then to quote the great philosopher Mike Tyson, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And you make the plan and then you throw out the plan and you just kind of wing it at one point,
Yeah.
So Scott, you've had a chance to be involved in. You brought it up before in a couple of different avenues since things have really gotten established here. The teaching. You serve worship sometimes, but really getting a chance to meet with smaller groups of the community and getting a chance to hear pretty directly from folks. So as the guy who's most often up here teaching and doing those things, being able to watch this whole process and then having had such a significant hand in getting this space ready for folks and things like that, watching all of that, what impact has that had on you as a pastor?
There's a lot of different ways. I'll echo a little bit of what Mike said in the small T trauma piece of it, because no matter what kind of boundaries you try to have through it, walking out on the other side has been one of the more challenging parts of like framing it so that you still have something to offer and processing all of the different ways that you just existed for the last year. That's been one of the things that I would say is like, okay, just understanding that like you're coming from a place of, it's not that it was crazy, but it was like high intensity for an extended period of time. And that has ways of affecting us at an emotional level, mental level, relational level. And so it's kind of like you get through that process and then you kind of start to take a little bit of a break. And I don't know that the break is necessarily the thing that was the most helpful. But what it did was it created enough space where some of those things started to come back to the surface. And it's like, oh, all right, I got to address this. Oh, why am I responding in tension now? Why am I responding? And so from that standpoint, that's been one of the things pastorally is understanding myself, but also being able to process, as Mike has already talked about, everybody's gone through a lot of this type of stuff. Everybody else had life in the midst of this as well. And so how do I engage with people that are also like have the full range of emotions?
Yeah.
And so that's been I think recognizing our humanity as pastors and our we don't get to put the superhero uniform on, that we also are there, that we're vulnerable, that we, don't have everything all together, has allowed me, like, this has been just a really good reminder that as I'm ministering to people, they're there as well. People are showing up tired. People are showing up mentally exhausted. People are showing up coming from a job that's miserable, or that has had a bad day, or whose family has been sick, or like people are here. And so it's reminded me of the importance of being a compassionate and gentle shepherd or pastor in how I engage with folks. So I think in one sense that's probably been the most profound thing, is just recognizing that people are people in how I'm engaging with them, because every like to quote the great philosopher, the band REM, everybody hurts, right? So everybody's got this whole thing going on, and it's like, so I get a chance to sit in with several different groups now. I've got another one that will have already been in process by the time this goes live. But I'm getting opportunities to come alongside of folks and really maybe, because you don't get to have conversations on a Sunday really well. Yeah. And so you're getting a chance to engage with folks in a group level, in a group conversation, but it does provide the relational connection for people to maybe pull back the layers of maybe invisibility or some of the barriers that people keep so that they don't have somebody take, and so pastorally, I feel like going through this, recognize that I'm not a superhero. I still have stuff I have to process, and that Jesus needs to bring some healing to in my life. Be patient with people in their process, as like what Jared's talking about in how you respond to things. People are also trying to respond to the Spirit. And so what I think is the best path for them may not be what the Spirit is saying is the best path for them. So be patient in that. Ask good questions, and hopefully help people like navigate that as a safe person for them, and a guide. And then it's starting to say, I just need to lean into my strengths. There are things that coming out of this last year that I can go, yeah, you know what? There was a lot of stuff that I got to play to my strengths over the summer. And so what does that look like in pastoral ministry now in this next season? How do I play to my strengths? Understanding there's going to be things I have to do that just aren't. But for me, I'm like, I really want to be finding opportunities and doorways into people's lives, because I think in that's a playing to my strength, as opposed to like, an ivory tower approach. So
one of the things that I thought was fascinating to watch as throughout that entire process, right? There was this duality of perspective for me, where I was a part of the team, but also with all of the history and all of the backstory of the Grove, there's also this measure of having kind of a bird's eye view of watching longtime friends and established church, all of that kind of stuff move. And when it came to the actual nuts and bolts of building this place out in different ways, in different contexts, and with different people, I watched each one of you guys come alongside somebody, maybe teach somebody, maybe partner with somebody, and still display those very characteristics that a shepherd should have, just in an entirely different context. It just wasn't in the Sunday morning context. It was to help get this. So a lot of that was more functional in nature, wasn't, there were conversations and different things like that, but it was also things like, how do you run a table saw, or, how do you set up these different audio pieces of audio, or how should this look, and what should this color be, and different things like that, in these different ways, but still that continuity of you guys still being you, even in the midst of a a significantly stressful situation. And both of you guys brought up the whole not really having a chance to have in-depth conversations with people sometimes. And one of the things that I think I've come to appreciate on a Sunday morning is there's a language base when I talk to any of the three of you that is this mix of raw honesty. How are you doing? We all know that if you ask that question, you're going to get an authentic answer, but also in a packaged in a way that says, okay, we can't unpack every single aspect of what that is, but you don't have to. And this is something that, honestly, this is something that working with you guys has taught me, is it's not an either or dynamic. It really can be a yes and dynamic. Now, yeah, there's the other part of the conversation of when do you find time, like you said, be intentional. Now you're not spending all of this time together on a project. So that means you have to put the legwork in to connect with folks and things like that and be able to have those deeper conversations. But just because that doesn't happen all the time doesn't mean that you can't still connect with people, even in a passing hug or as you're getting set up for Sunday morning or things like that. Yeah. You guys said small T trauma. I think this is an opportunity to display and as the host, I love that I get to move this in this direction because I didn't realize that this was going to come up. So happy about that.
Sure, yeah.
So folks watching this are getting a chance to see more of the humanity at display here. So, walking through all of that, open up a little bit, if you would, about what soul care looks like. Walking through, moving past, on the other side, looking at this runway and all of that, because it's not like it was a wholly negative experience by any means, just a largely stressful and intense one, and that does take a toll.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I'll start with you.
Okay.
What does soul care look like in a way that says, okay, I can keep punching through this whole thing, and then afterwards I can spend some time recovering?
Boundaries is probably the theme that'll come up the most for all of us. But I think for me, that's always been key. And last year, I actually started working with a counselor because I felt like there were things in my life that were repeating patterns, and I thought I need to get a handle on what are these patterns, why is this happening. It was a really bad year to start doing that.
Timing.
But I can't imagine what it would have been like if I hadn't had that at the forefront of my mind moving into this, because my first meeting with him was in May. And one of the things that he pointed out was, given my life history, I have a tendency to be over responsible for things, to take too much responsibility or feel that I have more responsibility than I should, and to kind of carry that weight along with everything else. So it was unpacking where that comes from and then how it plays out. So in the midst of it all, I'm going, well, what are my boundaries? What should I not be taking responsibility for that I feel responsible for? Where is that feeling coming from? So I think in the midst of it was the constant recognition that I want to grab more than I should. And where's the boundary this week? What's the boundary now? What do I have to? So that part of it was a constant figuring out where those boundaries are that are healthy, and then recognizing when I walk past a healthy boundary that I shouldn't have. So that's in the time, and then afterwards was recognizing emotionally, spiritually, physically, what am I feeling now?
Yeah.
Where's this coming from? Why do I have this sense of unease? Why is this sense of tension? Why am I responding to this person that way? Constantly going back and asking those questions and seeking then times, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour or whatever it is, having those times to sit with that question and ask the Holy Spirit, take me through this. What is it that where's this all coming from? And then being able to process it in a healthy way that allows me to not say, oh, it just is.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that's what soul care looked like during and after, and I'm still in the process, like
Right.
still figuring that out. But now it's more like the regular, everyday, normal, what does this look like in this context rather than the pressure cooker of the last year?
Right. That makes sense. Jer, how about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Mike was saying on the boundaries. Being able to take a project like this and to kind of go through the process of planning everything out prior. That's one of the things that I was looking at before we even got into this process. Is say, okay, if I can help, set some things up prior, I would be the process might be able to go a little bit easier. That's one of those little boundaries where, for myself, if I start to not do that, I learned that I step over those boundaries because taking too much responsibility for too many things. But I found that through this process of moving from the one building to another is that you can work with people to be able to take some of those responsibilities and just say, hey, this person can do this, and they're capable of doing that.
Yeah.
So not having to take that responsibility on it is something that was definitely helpful for me.
Right.
And knowing that just look at the paint. The one of the things was the paint in this space. There's a lot of wall space in here.
Yeah.
And when you have at least probably 15 or 20 people from the church who stepped up to say, we can paint, we can do this, and we don't have to be the ones doing that.
Yeah.
That is one of those things where I look at that. In a way, people spoke to me too, and I think they spoke to all of us. Is that they can take these things, and we as a community we can come together and be helpful for one another
Yeah.
to be able to get from one space to another.
Yeah.
So, soul care wise, it kind of is a community based thing. Because if we were all just on our own doing our own thing,
Yep.
I'm not sure if things would have come together the way they did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Scott?
So it kind of echoes of both of what the guys have said, but I would say one for me is like soul care is don't forget the lessons of the past, because there are things that I feel like life kind of taught me through a season of depression and burnout of, okay, don't go back there, so honor the boundaries that you recognize. But the other part of that is don't assume the lessons of the past are still the same for today. And so come back and reevaluate those things. So that's where, we talk about a rule of life or an intentional path that we choose to walk on in our walk with Christ. And what are those boundaries that we set up for ourselves so that we can really experience life to the fullest? And one of those things that I'm grateful I had that in place going into this year, because there were enough times where I was like, okay, nope, I have to go home. It's a Friday night. I'm going to be with my family. This is a late night. Okay, what does it mean for me to do this on this week or this on that week? And just understanding that there are certain limits that you have to have. The other part of it that I would lean on is just the importance of transparent relationships. like with Mike and Jer and you and a handful of other folks that I got a chance to work alongside of, there were enough people that came up and said, something's off, are you okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Yep.
You know, and to go, I had the choice at that point to go, I'm fine, you know, and just kind of like push somebody away in their concern, or to go, I'm just having a rough day. You know, I'm just tired. I'm just mentally tapped out. There's stress at home. There's whatever. Like entering into some of those relationships in a transparent level. The other thing that I would just mention as well is, like Mike said that he spent some time with a counselor last year. I just recently started a relationship with a counselor to help provide some soul care as well. I think there's benefit to that in coming out of a season of stress, to just have somebody that's a little more objective come alongside of you and hear your stories.
Yep.
And ask really good questions and guide you through that. I'd love to say I know exactly how it's going to go, but I've only had a couple meetings. But there was a time where I would have probably been like, I don't know that this is really super helpful. I felt like coming out of this last year, I needed someone that was a little more objective to sit with me and help me process some of those things that are rising to the surface after a year of high intensity, and helping me put those in their appropriate place. And so, you know, for me, it was looking for somebody that understood not only pastoral ministry and the stresses that are there, but also some of the medical challenges that I have in my own life, you know. So as I was looking for, like, kind of, I'm not a needle in a haystack, but I was looking for a very specific haystack to go and spend some time with. And I wanted somebody that loves God and is going to help me pursue that relationship. And so I think those are, like, not forgetting the lessons of the past, not assuming that those lessons are going to be the same forever, and then living transparently with people, and occasionally having some guides that you invite into your life. And and sometimes that costs. Like, you know, to go and spend some time with a counselor, it's not free. So it's like, okay, we're going to go do this because this matters. Because if I'm not healthy, then not only do I suffer, my family suffers, and our church suffers. And so what does it look like for me to say, okay, Lord, help me to be the healthiest version of me that I can be, and help me to be processing life and faith in the healthiest way possible. And so it's worth the investment in our lives for that, and because the ripple effects of that, I think, are way better for the people that we have a chance to minister to.
Yeah. That's, again, wisdom, that you recognize that is a trickle-down effect, that in order to lead people well, you have to be aware of where you're at and be willing to engage with processes that help care for you as a leader. So a couple of things to round off on a high note. Favorite aspect of the new space, and why is it the distinct lack of huskies in the parking lot as you're trying to walk into the building?
Yeah. I could tell you one of the neat things that, just because it's on my mind, our Good Friday service, Mike and I were talking about just like, how many people will come? You know, it's a night service. It's what's that look like? And to be in a space where I'm not worried at night now about what's going to happen for folks. If they come, the parking lots are lit. They can show up. They can come in. They can be a part of a service. We can do groups at night. And so I love, like, one of the things that I get pumped about is we're not tied to a specific time of day for safe interactions here. Because that it just enables more relational connection for folks that are available at different times of the day.
Yeah, for sure. How about you, Jer?
There's a lot of little things.
Yeah.
I mean, just to reiterate what Scott said, not only just the time of day, but just being able to have a safe place for people to park. You know, because having people walking up and down the main busy street of Main Street, you know, and there's a lot of cars, there's a lot of things that are going on. If people are walking, 2-3 blocks, having to cross the road,
Yeah.
even for like when people visit, having to cross the road from the other parking lot to the existing parking lot we had, that was a concern. You had, and we weren't able to have people out there to be watching that all the time.
Right.
But just the space that we have now, the extra space on the outside to be able to have some conversations with people within the community, and the fact that we can keep improving on that, I'm really looking forward to seeing what we're able to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite aspect of this building when we looked at it back in October of '22 was the outside space. That the fact that our other space had no outdoor space at all, like a parking lot for 13 cars, and that was it.
So you got a porch.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah, so this is, this almost, to me, it feels like a park. Like
Yeah.
It's a pocket park, it's a mini
Yeah,
space,
yeah.
but it feels like a place where, and I'm so excited to see how it shapes out as the weather gets nicer. It feels like a space where people could hang out after a service, where we get some tables or picnic tables or something, and we basically have a patio out front where people can just get together and have lunch. We can do yard games randomly throughout the year, if throughout the summer, if we just want to put up hey, we're going to go down and play a few yard games this evening on a Friday night, we can do that. There's space outside to just enjoy being outside. That's one of the things that hasn't happened yet, so I'm really eager to see if we can maximize on that. But I think the other element of it is it does feel, from a musical standpoint, it feels more conducive to having the band here. The sound in the room is better. The engagement from the people is better. I love having all of the chairs here on the floor rather than 100 chairs on the floor and like 60 or 70 in a balcony that was split up into 4 different rooms, and you get like 5 people in each one. So the space itself, I think even though the sanctuary is bigger, it feels, to me, more intimate. You can have more people together, and it still will feel more intimate than the other space did because it separated so many people.
Yeah. It has a clean feel to it.
Yeah.
That the other space was more cozy. Like there's just cleaner lines, and it's nice to have people here.
Yeah, and the first thing that people said, our first service, the main thing that I heard was, the sound is so much better here. Everything sounds cleaner. It sounds clearer. The band sounds tighter. Like all of it just adds to the experience of people coming in. It's fewer distractions walking in here. So I'm excited about that.
I'm excited. I'm sorry, I'm throwing on, but I'm excited in regards to that. A lot of the concerns people had was, would the space feel warm?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
And I for the most part, I have not heard. I've not heard anybody say it doesn't. I've heard people still say it's different, but it feels good.
Right.
My daughter, who just turned 15, she came into this space and she was like, "Wow, this feels so much more inviting than the old one." And I didn't know what I'm steeped in it, so I don't know what feels inviting and what doesn't. But that was her observation, was the way we organized the room. We put couches in different, like in the sanctuary setting, there's couches and chairs and tables. We created like these little pockets. So it actually feels more inviting and relaxed than the other space did to her. And that was that was the biggest concern we had moving in. People they're like, yeah, we know we need to move, but we don't want to lose the intimacy and the warmth that the old space has. And then coming in, people were like, I can't believe this feels as inviting, if not more inviting than the old space did.
Yeah. I think the old space, with everything that you guys were talking about before, about the history of the building and the architecture, the stained glass, the whole 9 yards, there is something beautiful about it. There is something intoxicating about that sort of expression of worship. But to somebody on the outside, if they're walking in, the building, the architecture, the balcony, the potential separation of the different things can all bring somebody about to a particular mindset.
Yeah.
In some ways, a space like this could bring people into a very similar mindset by a different path.
Yeah.
But with everybody together, then coupled with the culture, because that's been one of the biggest things. And for those of you listening, you guys have heard this already by the time this airs and you know, production and all that. That walking into the context of the Grove, I was convinced that size mattered more than a lot of other things. And I realized it's not about size, it's about culture. I'll argue the larger you get, the harder it is to establish a certain culture.
Yep.
But it's far from impossible. And so when you have a group like this in a setting like this, those things have to go hand in hand of how you lay out the building, but also what the culture of the group of people coming together for the worship gathering is. And that comes from the folks that they are listening to the most, and that's going to be you guys. So last thing, you guys kind of jumped the gun and went there. So I'll start with you, Jer. You know, it's a brave new world, right? You know, we're less than a year out from when this place started, and simultaneously it feels like it's been a lot longer than that, a lot shorter than that. But so what gets you excited about this space, about what's possible or on the horizon for the Grove?
Like I had said, the space on the outside to be able to be engaged in the community a little bit more, like Mike was talking about, just be able to have those conversations with people. You know, I think that, you know, within this context, we're trying to build those relationships, not only within the church, but I think that you know, outside of the church, and even just friends and people that we all see outside of the church. You know, we're trying to invite them in to look at this and say, hey, I'd like to be a part of something more than just what I have right now. You know, that's exciting for me as we move forward, and the fact that we're working on getting all these different groups together too. I think that those smaller engagements, so that it doesn't feel like this is a big group. Even though there's, like Mike was saying, there's like 170 chairs here. That's really not a big group, but it's the smaller groups that we have within it that we're trying to get people to connect with. That's really exciting for me, because we have that small group even with just ourselves, and those relationships that we have are we've been working together for a lot of years. You know, and I think people need those relationships.
Mike?
I think there's a flexibility here that we didn't have before. So I can't say exactly what. I don't have anything in mind that I'm excited about coming. But I feel like we're not, like we have many more options. So I feel I'm excited about dreaming a little bit more. For so long, and maybe this has more, this is like the bigger picture of when COVID hit, things changed for churches all over the world. Things changed for us. So in 2020, that changed. And then we kind of like started 2022, where we just in January said, I think we can take masks off. So then in October of 2022, we said, I think we need to move. And now we're in 2024, and it's the first year that I feel like we can start to look at what's coming rather than maintaining. So almost 5 years worth of, let's just maintain, let's make sure we get through, let's figure out how to make this work. We haven't really dreamed about what we could be doing. And now we're here, and I've just started to see the flickers of being able to dream about what we could be doing, what this space could lead us into, what opportunities we have now that we're here. So I think I'm more excited about being able to dream ahead a little bit and look ahead to actually feel like there is more of a future thought process rather than just maintain, hope we make it through the year type of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say for me, there's two aspects to it. One is every property has its challenges. So that's not to say that this property doesn't have its challenges, but there are less barriers, I think, here than we're at the other place.
Yeah.
So the ease of which with which somebody could show up and engage the community here, engage in relationships, they don't have to get past the parking. They don't have to get past the outside of the property. They don't have to get past all of these little things that make people go, is it like, I remember having conversations and being like, you just got to see the inside. You just got to get inside and spend time with folks here.
Yeah.
And then you'll understand what makes the Grove like special. Once you get inside and you spend time with people, and the amount of people that were like, I never would have guessed the inside was so nice. You know, it's like, okay, here we don't have that. Now, unfortunately, in one sense, we have a building that looks like a church, like, you know, a relatively modern church. And so some people they're just going to be skeptical of that right off the bat. But what I get excited about as I look forward in this new space, I think it's a different set of barriers, but there's less barriers for people to engage. And so what excites me as I start looking forward in some of those dreams is how do I, like the chance to actually start empowering people to do what God's wired them to do. Like to come alongside of folks and be like, listen, like, oh, you're like, let's help you do that. And it's not necessarily tied here, but I think this space gives us more opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
And it's weird how a location can change your mindset about how to do things, but I that's what I'm excited to see. Not necessarily what happens in the property itself now. I'm excited to see what happens with the people that call the Grove their home church and how they start to engage in this location and from this location. Like,
Yeah, a conversation we've had in different forms, in different degrees, to varying degrees of method, we'll say, is the Grove has stepped into nigh limitless potential with a place this size, with the annex and everything that goes on up there, or that's equipped for, and all this kind of stuff. And so I am excited and hopeful about the opportunities that the Grove now finds itself with, the resources that the Grove now finds itself with. And I'm excited to see what happens to this neighborhood that I care deeply for, because this is my neighborhood, to see what happens next, to see the ripple effects of the Grove here now. So, guys, thank you all for joining me, and guys, thank you all for watching. It has been. It was a joy to get a chance to pick your guys' brain and get a chance to now have this conversation all those months after we did the initial interviews now, after having walked through everything. So guys, stay tuned for more to come as you guys are watching this. As you know already by some of the conversations that we've had on the camera, Rough Cut Faith is in transition. So make sure that you stay tuned to the YouTube channel to see what comes next for the show. And as always, if there's anything that was talked about today, any questions that you have for the guys, you can 100% go to Jeremy. And that's going forward. So just as you guys watch this,
Open
just
invitation.
We say this every week. Just so you know.
No wonder. Yep.
Jeremy's like, what? This is
Now
why
I-
I get
now
all
I
these
know.
questions on a weekend.
But guys, it has been a pleasure, and I'm glad that we get a chance to wrap this thing up with all 4 of us sitting together. So, guys, stay tuned, and we'll catch you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.